Hello, Tiffany here with Cards Crafty Creations. So today I'm going to be doing a video on something very practical for your desk for when you are crafting. I have quite a few projects coming up, and a lot of them require the use of liquid glue, which is what I usually use when I am doing projects with chipboard or anything that's not like a card making type of craft. So I do use a lot of liquid adhesive, and one of the things that I don't like about using that is when the liquid adhesive is not at the tip to be used. Usually the way they're designed is that they stand up on your desk or they lay flat and then they're rolling all over your desk, so the adhesive is always at the bottom, which requires you to then shake the bottle to get the glue down. And so one of the things I wanted to create before starting my projects through this year was a liquid bottle holder. So I have looked on Amazon, and I did find some that you could purchase on Amazon, and I know some crafters already have them, and that has been helpful for them using the smaller tube glues, but I thought, why pay for one when I have an abundance of craft supplies here? So I designed a design that would work best for what I do. And so it can hold, tacky glue is usually the one that I use, just because I have quite a bit of it, and you can get it at the dollar store, and it's a fairly inexpensive glue. And sometimes you can even get turbo tacky glue, which dries like really quickly. This doesn't take too long to dry, but turbo tacky is even faster. But this way, they used to have an older design that had it this way all the time. The lid was flat and the size of the bottle, which I'll show you in the video, but it was always this way, so the glue was always ready to use. Where this design you have here, which is the one you can get most places and the one that's readily available, it is intended to stand up, which means the glue is all the way down here versus here, and then you're shaking the tube to try and get the glue down to the end. So I decided, instead of buying one, I would create my own. I knew that I wanted a semi-sturdy base so that it wasn't tipping over when the bottle was full, and that's partially why I created this slanted design on the tube, was so that it would kind of counterbalance itself. Once the glue got to the bottom, it would put more of the weight on this side because it's tilted that way, versus if you put it straight up, it could probably topple either way. That was just something I tried to use in the design. I wanted a fairly good sized base so it wasn't tipping over as well. So this is kind of the design I came up with, and so far it has served me well. I have been working on some projects, and it even helped me in creating this project. You'll see that I use it in the video. But it does hold tacky glue. Another glue I have is just the Simon Says Stamps Craft Tacky Glue. It holds that as well. And so it's been really helpful. One of the design situations I found with this was the bottom of this is chipboard, and throughout the time of using the glue, you know, anytime you have a glue that's tilted down, some glue will seep out. And so I was finding that the glue was seeping out into the bottom of the tube and picking up that chipboard. So like, I put it down there, and then some glue would come out and it'd start to dry, and then when I took it out, some of the chipboard was coming off. So I remedied that with some acetate in the bottom, because glue won't stick to that. Well, this glue will not, and it's it'll peel right out should that happen, which it does, and that's okay. But I found that to be helpful. So this is the project we're going to create today with just using supplies you have in your craft room, I'm sure. This is actually a wrapping paper tube. Christmas just ended, so wrapping paper tubes were in abundance at my house, so I used that. And then these are just pieces of chipboard that I've cut down to size, and using a paper pad that I had in my stash, as well as flowers for the embellishments. So stick around and we will get to creating this liquid tube holder. Okay, so here is a better, closer image of what we're going to create. It has a base, it's about 3/4 of an inch, I think. No, it's 1 inch. All the way around. I thought that would give it some stability so it doesn't like tip over. And then it has a base, and then the wrapping paper or paper towel or toilet paper tube. The size of tube you want should fit your glue. This one will fit anything this size or smaller, obviously. Like I said, tacky glue is the one that I actually use the most, only because I have more of it. This was a design that Tacky Glue had several years ago. I'm not sure, 2015. And it was actually my favorite design for their glue because it is actually designed to stand up, always at the ready. So it's always at the tip, the glue's at the tip, and then you can just use the cap as its base. So oftentimes I would just use it and then put it back and get it out of my way. This was my favorite design. I have never seen the design again. Usually you can find it just like this. This one I can design myself, and I can make it match my room. I can make it whatever design paper I want. And so that's what we're going to be making. So the paper collection that I chose for this one here, and also the one that I'm going to create today, is actually, I got it at Tuesday morning. It's Pebbles. I guess that's the brand. Let me see. Pebbles Garden Party. Okay, so now that we have all our pieces, we will go ahead and get started. Then we're going to cut this out, this piece. You can use an X-Acto knife or you can use scissors. Okay, and that is our tube and that part of our base. Okay, so we're going to set this stuff aside and start assembling our box, our base. One of the things you're going to need also are some scrap pieces of paper. These are 1 inch by about 2.5, 2 5/8. They're just scrap pieces. They're just part of the end of the piece of paper I had. So you'll need 1 inch by, however, just don't exceed the 3 inch because they're actually going to be attaching them to the base. And then some 1 by probably 3/4. These are going to be used to attach the two sides together. So what I do with these is I take them and I score them at 1/2 inch. And then once I score them, I miter the edges because that just makes it so the edges, if it's not lined up right or it's not a true square, it's not going to be hanging off. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take our glue. I always put the lid on when I'm not using it. So like when I'm done for crafting for the day or the project, I usually close the lid up. And then we take that and put it right on the edge there. So it's not hanging over the edge, but it's right in line with the top edge of this chipboard. So you can see it is coming off of this top edge here. And I just glue that in place, and I do that with all 4 pieces of the chipboard. Okay, once I have all 4 of the sides together, we can attach those to our top. So what we actually, on the 3-inch piece is where we want our hole. So I'm just going to move these out of the way. Okay, so now that I have cut the correct piece, this is technically how it's supposed to look. So I did it a little bit more snug this time, so it's not so loose in the base. And then you're going to push it through about a 1/2 inch to 1 inch. You'll get the final dimensions once we get the sides put on, but that's technically what it's going to do. So I'm going to set that aside again and keep our top out. So the part that has the hole in it, we're now going to connect all of our sides. So what I do is and you're going to want to make sure that you connect the right sides. So what I mean by that is if you pick the 2 7/8 and put it here, you got to put the other 2 7/8 on the other side. You can't have a 3, and a 2 7/8. Because remember, these are supposed to sit inside of the 3s. So I attach it just like that. And I line it up to the edge of the chipboard here. As best as you can. Okay. And what you'll notice is that my hole is actually is in the way of the paper. So I'm going to cut that out. Probably with my X-Acto knife, but going forward I'm just going to take a little bit off of each of these in their middle so that they will not cover the hole. Continue to attach them on the sides. Remember, 2 7/8. I'm going to get my other 2 7/8 and attach it to this side. Okay, So once all of the sides are attached to our top, what we're going to do is we need to attach the corners, because you see they're kind of flopping out and we don't want that to happen. So that's where we're going to take our 1-inch piece and we're going to score it at 1/2 inch. So these look like they're 1x1s. They're just scrap pieces also. Score it at the 1/2 inch mark, and you have 4 of them. Okay, now what we're going to do with these is we are actually going to take these and attach our corners together with them. Okay, so you'll want to put glue on both sides. Okay, and bring the corners together, square. Okay, so now that all of our corners are put together and they're square, we can now attach this piece to our base. So our base is our 3.5 by 3.5, and we're going to attach it to the base like that. So how I attach it to the base is I take more of these and I attach them this time to the outside, and I make them flush with the base. Okay, so we're going to take this and we're going to attach it to our box and line it up with the bottom of the box. So you see here how it has the flap attached to the bottom, because that's going to actually adhere to this base. So we're going to do that with all 4 sides. Okay, so now that we have all of our pieces connected to the bottom of our box, we can flip it over and it's going to attach there. What I do is I'm going to make me some guidelines because I want my box, at least the top, to be semi-square. So I'm going to mark out 1/4 inch on each side. And do a line. And same with these sides here. This is just going to give me a guide so that I get my box in a relatively square on here. So what I'll be able to do is take these corners and match them up to that corner, and then I know that it's at least kind of centered on the base. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my glue and I'm going to run it along the edge of the chipboard, and on most of this you don't have to go all the way to the edge because it's actually longer than it needs to be. We're going to cut that off later. And then once you do that, put it on your base, line up those corners and press down on all of those tabs that we made to connect this. I like to actually keep, when I'm dealing with liquid glue, I tend to keep a paper towel, and I usually use that to smooth out, because then it will pick up all of the residue that comes squishing out when you pressure on that. So this is going to do that. Okay, once that has kind of dried, see how it gushes all out the sides? Take a paper towel, clean that up. Not a big deal, doesn't have to be cleaned up. Then I take my scissors and I cut off the excess. You could make it a 1/4 of an inch by 1/4 of an inch, which would be a 1/2 inch scored at 1/4 of an inch, but I think it's just easier to do it this way, and you get more leverage here, and then you can just cut them off. If you do start out with 1/4 of an inch and 1/4 of an inch, you might have it still running off if your score line isn't exact, and so this just gives you a little bit of room for error, and so that's why I chose to do it that way. So this actually is our base, and then the tube goes inside of there, and now you have our base structure. Now we're going to go ahead and start covering it with paper. So I'm going to get my pattern paper out. One thing you can do is you can take a black marker and you can color all your edges. That way, if your pattern paper doesn't exactly match up, at least your edges aren't going to look like chipboard. They'll all be black. So that's just an extra thing that I do to give myself some room for error. Like I said, if I didn't cut the pieces of paper quite right, at least they'll be camouflaged by this versus seeing chipboard. And you don't have to use black, you can use whatever color you want. I actually, if I'm using more of a vintage look and my paper palette is more browns, I have a brown marker like this that I do. And then I'm going to do the tops also, just in case my 1/4 inch pieces aren't quite right either.